Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second episode of MIHRM Insights. This is a talk show brought to you specially by MIHRM. My name is Koljit. I like to be addressed as Ajit. I am a HR practitioner for the past 25 over years in Malaysia and also a council member with MIHRM. I am privileged to be the host for this session today. Unfortunately, you are only going to be able to hear me and the two speakers because my co-host, Dr. Yas, is actually on her way to Philippines, flying for a business trip. She will not be able to join us. A bit unfortunate for her, but fortunate for me because I get all the airtime. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. Today we are honored to have two highly respected professionals who bring deep practical experience in governance, leadership, and industrial relation for our talk. Okay, before we move on, allow me to introduce a little bit about MIHRM. We are MIHRM, known as Malaysian Institute of Human Resource Management. We continue to drive excellence in HR in Malaysia. Okay, we have been around for 50 over years, and we are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. So please join us. There are going to be a lot of activities upcoming in conjunction with our 50th years of our 50th year celebration anniversary. So please feel free to join us in any activity that we do. Before I move on, allow me to explain what does MIHRM do. We are a professional body that manages HR standards. Number one. Number two, we also lead leadership practices in Malaysia. Okay, we also contribute or we also advocate industrial harmony, and finally we build capabilities for Malaysian workforce. Okay, so today we invite everybody to stay connected with MIHRM through various platforms. We do certification programs, we do HR leadership forums, we do our IR and employee law updates from time to time. We also have quite a number of talent and leadership development initiatives, especially surrounding human resources area. Okay, so please follow us on our LinkedIn, also on our Facebook, our TikTok, and all websites, all social medias. Okay, and finally, what do? We try to advocate HR to a better level in Malaysia. Okay, with me this afternoon, I have got two distinguished speakers. Okay, and we are going to talk about a wonderful topic. Our topic is going to be around: is HR truly the moral compass of the organization, or is it HR itself is under pressure to get to do that? So it's a big question mark. We are going to talk about, or we are going to explore some areas. Number one, we're going to talk about ethical decision making. We're going to talk about governance and the challenges that we face. We're going to talk about the investigation of integrity issues. We will talk a little bit about leadership accountability in organization. And finally, we will talk about the future role of HR in Malaysia. So there's quite a bit of things. And with me, I have got two distinguished guests, as I've mentioned. Number one, being a very close friend of mine, Dato Abdul Rahim Ahmad. Okay, before I have him on board here with me. Now, Dato Rahim has already worked or he brings along years of tenure with leading multinational organizations such as NSTP, Padi Beras, HRSC, MBSB, Nationwide Express, and currently he's with Pahang Corp. So, ladies and gentlemen, put my hands together to welcome Dato Abdul Rahim Ahmad. Hi, Dato.
Hi everyone. Hi Ajit. Thank you for having me here. Very good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh and salam madani. So I'm glad to be here with my friend Ajit, who will be hosting the program today. and I hope I can share some of my experience throughout this 1.5 hour session. I also
Yes.
started with Maybank, Ajit.
Oh,
I was
okay. I
also with
missed that out.
Maybank.
Oh,
I was with
okay, okay.
Maybank, with Arab Bank, with New States Times, no? With Padibras
Ah,
National Berhad, Nationwide Express, and BSB Bank. And now I am with the Pahang Corporate Management Services based in Kuantan, one of the state JLC. Just a
ah,
little bit of addition lah, Jit. Okay.
okay. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Dato is also our vice president of human resource in MIHRM as well. He's also one of our esteemed council members. Okay, my next speaker for today, I have got a person who comes with similar experience. Let's bring on Mr. Selvaraju Pillai. Okay, Mr. Raju, welcome on board. Mr. Raju came with, has worked for various multinational, holding various leadership roles in organizations such as Intel, Dell, Sunway International Hotel, BASF, um, and IMF, International Monetary Fund, for I think close to 12 years. So both of these esteemed speakers brings along a depth of knowledge and a depth of information. So ladies and gentlemen, what you need to do from your end is listen to our conversation as we go along. We welcome feedback, we welcome comments, and we also welcome questions. But before I move on, allow me to say to welcome Mr. Raju and have him say a few words.
Thank you, Ajit. Good afternoon, everyone, or rather, a very good afternoon, a Saturday afternoon, I must say. Right? Um, it's actually a privilege to actually be in this speaker forum with Ajit and, of course, with Dr. Rahim. Yeah, we do have I believe it's a great topic to have. And I think hopefully with your questions coming through and some of the questions that we will actually be talking about will hopefully provide some level of insight on how we can best manage as in this session, right? Just one more thing, just to add from what Ajit kind of mentioned, I'm also currently the chairman of the MIHRM Northern Region chapter at this point.
Yes, I was
Right?
about to come to that, Raju. Raju
Yeah,
is also part of our MIHRM family. He leads our Penang
yeah,
chapter. Okay,
yeah,
fantastic,
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Okay,
Ajit.
before we move on, before we move on, the topic today revolves a little bit about integrity, and it talks a little bit about HR playing the role in organization itself. Okay, to start off, let me just ask both the speakers very general questions. In today's environment where organization faces performance pressure, political expectations, and social media scrutiny, do you think HR in Malaysia is becoming stronger as the organization moral compass, or increasingly compromised by business pressure? Just to get the ball rolling. Because I've been a HR practitioner, I think sometimes it's some events, there's a lot of pressure. We want to do the right thing, but we find it difficult. Okay, let's get the ball rolling. I want to start the session with Dato Rahim addressing this.
Okay, thank you, Ajit. I think the question posed today is quite challenging, especially in the current business environment. So more often than not, we have been hearing a lot of things that touch on integrity nowadays, especially in the outside business world. So I think first we have to understand what is the meaning, the context of organizational moral compass theory. I think this is an enacted principles and values that provide guidance for company decision, behaviors, and action. It will function as internal mechanism, that help guide organization, navigate complex choices. I think at the moment we are also having a very complex choices, and also sometimes ethical ambiguities and trade-off between profit and stakeholders' responsibility. I think being in HR, I think sometimes our role is being the sandwich between the cost of the organization as well as some ethical values which we need to maintain. But again, I think the key aspect of HR people nowadays, it should be when integrity is concerned, it should go beyond just compliance issue. I think it goes beyond mere legal requirement to embrace deeper ethical responsibilities such as sustainability, fairness, and impactful solution. These enacted values basically not just mere mission statement, but how the organization actually operates in daily practices, in doing their business, that kind of thing. The ethical guidance provides North Star for employees. I think being in HR, sometimes we got to play the role of providing the North Star for the employees. I mean, where we want to bring the organization as expected, right? Okay, challenges are always there. There's no such thing. We are selling on a very smooth selling ground. Challenges come always. No, it comes as a surprise sometimes. But the key components to these ethical behaviors, to me, I think it has to be on ethical leadership. First issue. Second, I think we must have very strong corporate culture, and I think I would like to characterize this strong moral compass based on three things. First is on transparency, second on integrity, and third is on commitment to the stakeholders. I think these are the three things that we need to really value nowadays when talk about integrity. And therefore, HR's role today not merely just managing HR matters, but also need to look beyond HR matters, or especially on integrity issue. Right, Ajit, over to you.
Agreed. I also agree. HR have to look beyond, beyond. Okay, very good. Okay, Mr. Raju, anything to add on?
Yes, thanks, Ajit. Dato, I think he brought up a very good point. Yeah, and I'm not going to kind of reiterate again, but I can actually give one or two additional nuggets in that sense, my view as well. I've been in the HR arena for well over 30 years. I think we have seen a lot of things kind of evolve. In the past to even today, there's always a tension between business expectation to how HR folks need to practice in that sense, right? I think the point around challenges, I think challenges has always been there. But I think at this point in time where we are, it's a situation where it is kind of exponentially elevated a lot more, meaning there's a lot more in terms of how we being HR practitioners need to actually navigate the current landscape. That's my view, right? And it's very important. There's always a constant tension around it. I'm actually a firm believer in the sense of any organization that we go to, it is a matter of how we are able to strike the balance and build a strong partnership with the senior leaders as quick as possible. That has been my kind of a constant process in that sense, right? So I'm going to kind of stop at this point, and of course, that was actually highlighted a lot of other key points around that topic. So this is my perspective on it. Thanks.
Okay, very good.
I would like to add a few more points. Just a couple of points to add to Mr. Raju. I think in Malaysia today, we are quite fortunate because when it comes to Ogre National Compass, we are being guided by so many things. First, I think, especially late now, there is a greater emphasis on ESG, which eventually will become a requirement. And also, the strong enforcement by authorities such as JTK, JPP, DOS, and other regulatory bodies, and then also compliant with MIHRM in promoting governance and integrity culture, and also the culture of whistleblowing and anti-harassment policies. I believe that most organizations will have this kind of policies in their company. The other point that we must not overlook is the social media pushes HR to act transparently and ethically. Anything today you do is not right, it will always come out in the social media. So therefore, as HR people, we got to be very, very careful. On the same note, I think the younger workforce now is demanding more and better things to them. For example, they're demanding fairness, they demand inclusion, inclusivity, and also the psychological safety. So HR also need to play this role. And I think I also believe that over the years, HR role has changed a lot. those days we hardly see that HR leaders are on board of organization. But I think today we have quite a number of HR leaders who are on board of a company, especially on the GLCs and PLCs. So these are the platform for HR to strengthen their thoughts on integrity. So they may be involved in the thought level decision making of the organization. So they know exactly what is the direction of the organization. So this is what we mean by integrity among HR people in the current business environment, right? Okay.
Okay, very good. I think Datuk summed it up very well. So, in the nutshell, we are talking about challenges, talking which revolve around ethical leadership, strong corporate culture, and Datuk talk about transparency, integrity, value to the stakeholders. I like the part where Raju talk about striking a balance. Talking about making sure that whatever that we do also meet business expectation and also manage our stakeholders needs as well, no? And then Dato came in again to talk a little bit more about greater emphasis, because we already in Malaysia rightfully said we already have a lot of support, whereas we have got our ESG in place, JPK, JTK, DOSH, and a governance board and things like that. So they're all there to play a role. Fantastic. Now, this brings me to our next question. This question resonates very closely with me because as a HR practitioner, when I was growing up and even now, I do feel this dilemma. Okay, many HR professionals says they know the right ethical decisions. You know what is right and what is wrong. You black and white. We know. Okay, but they struggle when senior leadership expects a different outcome. Okay, for whatever apparent reason, they expect a different outcome. From your experience, what is the hardest integrity decision HR leaders must make today? Okay, before I move on, I've got some spectators saying hi. Rafizi Ahmad says, Hadir, thank you very much. Then I've got Kang saying, Kang here, hello from Penang. Oh, Kang is in Penang. How nice. Okay, good. So for the others, listeners, do say hi, do say hello, allow us to interact a little bit. And as we go along, you can pass comments, you can pass questions, you can also put in what are your thoughts about our topic today. Cheng is also saying hi. Okay, hi Cheng. These are one of our students and MHRM successful students. Okay, going back to my question, Dato.
Okay. I think before I answer that question, I would like to touch a bit on the role of HR itself. Where does the strength comes from? I am a firm believer that in order to be a strong HR leader, I think first thing, you must have your CEO and board commitment to ethics lah. Right? In other words, they must believe what the HR is going to do for the organization. Secondly, I think there must be some organizational governance maturity. That means, of course, maturity does not come within overnight, kan? The culture has to develop over a period of time. That come to a level of maturity. Third, I think there must be independence of HR reporting structure. So that's why I think of late we have seen that a lot of HR leaders are reporting to the CEO, whereas those days we hardly see any of the head of HR reporting to CEO. Okay, so that has improved a lot of late. I think as HR leaders, you must have that professional courage and competence of HR leaders. No, that's very critical. If you're not competent, you will not be able to give the right advisory services to your top management. Sometimes they make decisions out of context. So come to the question, the hardest integrity decision leaders must make today. I think so. Just through some of my personal experience, Ajit, I think this is one of the biggest challenges faced by HR leaders today, is especially when it involves senior leadership ethical issues, right? Or even in some operational decision in the organization. I come across, my personal experience. I was working in one of the company that was already not doing well, losing a lot of money, that kind of thing, And we believe that at that point of time, in a matter of time, if you do not do anything, the company will close down. Okay? It's true enough. So the issue was we have submitted various proposal to the board to to create something, to do something. For example, in order to survive in the long term, we have to reduce costs. All right. Of course, one of the ways to reduce costs is to look at your numbers again, your manpower numbers. So we put the proposal to the board, but unfortunately, the proposal was not been accepted. Simply because they fear that by having that kind of retrenchment, it will not look too good on them as leaders of that particular organization. Secondly, I think once you do retrenchment, that will come in the social media, right? And also, thirdly, I think it will not be just too good in the public eyes. Because of that, that decision was not being executed, and unfortunately, over just a couple of months after that, the company need to be closed down, because the company can no longer sustain in terms of paying the staff salary and so forth. Of course, when we do the exercise, we are not looking at the people's angle, but we also look at the various angle of how do we want to save cost for that particular organization. So I think sometimes being in HR, you have to hold the bulls by its own logic.
Yeah.
You have to call it spade, you have to call it spade lah. But this is not easy. Yeah, it's not easy. Sometimes, contohnya kan, last few days I came across someone who asked me, Dato', how am I going? My CEO asked me to terminate a GM who is on probation, But I asked him, do you have any assessment, evaluation before you want to terminate this? Then no, there's nothing on record. So I think it's difficult, kan? But the CEO keep on asking, please terminate. This is the role that HR got to face. So I think sometimes it's tough, but you got to please both sides of the world, your professional job as a HR person, and also you need to please the leaders of your organization. Okay, Jit, over to you.
Okay, agreed. I totally agree with what Dato was saying, especially the part where termination comes in. I don't know why. I can bet my last bottom dollar that every HR practitioner would have experienced this before. Management say terminate, and then we know we can't because of the law, blah blah blah. And it really puts a lot of pressure on HR practitioner. Understand? Fantastically well said. Okay, let's hear what Raju has got to say.
Okay, thanks, Ajit. I would probably kind of sum up a little bit more shorter because in the essence of time, but I think the points mentioned by Dato is very valid, obviously. And I think we all know, we being on the HR side of it, you may have heard of this. Folks in the management love to think out of box all the time, right? Sometimes thinking out of box sometimes leads to disaster. Sorry, I'm using that word blatantly, but it can go very, very wrong, right? I mean, that's the key there, right? Obviously, that being said, we, from an HR side of it, we need to strike that balance. I can mention that again and again because we do not want to get into the path of being compromising, right? We have to be very careful in terms of maintaining the status quo on the compliance aspect of it, and we should actually kind of provide the right level of guidance, right? From my work experience personally, right, I've had many occasions of conversations with senior leaders. They would actually say, let's do this. And sometimes while it is, even till today, it is very hard for someone to say no, right? As opposed to always saying yes, that stance needs to change. We need to be a bit more bold. We need to be able to manage status quo. We need to actually put some structure and logic in the event of a conversation is actually kind of heading the wrong way. It is our onus from an HR standpoint to strike that balance between organization and employee well-being. Because I always put ahead and tell to myself, HR, from a senior standpoint, we have to make sure that we always bring that compliance aspect of it, and we need to safeguard organization in anything.
Okay.
I always tell managers, sorry, Ajit, one more thing. I've always tell managers that when something goes wrong, and if the case is actually heading to the external side of it, typically only one individual is called to come and explain the matter, which is HR. Right? So I'm going to kind of stop at that point because there's a lot more that we'll be discussing shortly. Thanks, Sajid.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you. I like this part where we talk a lot about role of HR. Dato said about HR role must have organization maturity as well. And I like Raju talking about playing the role of and safeguarding the organization. Very good, very good. Let me revisit the comments or the feedback from the audience. Idris. Idris is saying hi. Then I have got SKB. Interesting topic. Thank you. I agree with you. It's an interesting topic. And I've got Manaf. Mr. Manaf. Hi, Mr. Manaf. Thank you for joining us. He says hi to me, Dato, and Raju. And we have Keng. Keng came up with a question or a comment probably. Sometimes, if the C-suite likes to play politics and favoritism, it makes it difficult to advise how best to address such a situation. Yes, before I move on to my third question, my next question, let's do this question first. Okay, Dato, you want to take this up first?
Okay, as I said earlier, sometimes you are sandwiched between two situations, right? I mean, we have come across many moments in the past, Ajit, especially when you are dealing with the union, right? So, but of course, we're not saying the union is bad altogether, but the point is, management would see it differently, and the union would see it differently. So, being an HR, you are the one who should be able. Should we try to mitigate that kind of situation? I have. We are under pressure. We are faced in two paradox, no? And what are we supposed to do in this kind of situation? To me, there's no magic formula, Jit, Basically, one of it, I think, of course, you have to state your stand, You have to state your stand, but sometimes by stating your stand, it can be quite happening too. It can cost you, by stating your stand, right? Second, I think you have to use our moral persuasion, to convince the top bosses, if things are not right, we have to highlight first, And of course, finally, it's your call, Because sometimes we see some HR managers, they join an organization, I mean, less than a year, they leave the organization, right? There must be something wrong in that kind of relationship, So there's no magic formula, there's no easy solution, but I think as HR professional, we have to state our stand. So, but again, if you state your stand clearly, abruptly to your CEO, I mean, you can also be at stake, right? Okay, that's just a few words.
Betul. Okay, Raju, anything to add on King's question?
Is he has mentioned C-suite. Is it a person or many people? Right?
Normally, it starts. Let me clear. It starts with one, then it becomes more.
So the reason I asked that was this, right? I can recall on many occasions, there's always one individual who's always very loud than the rest, right? It's like they say, empty vessel blows like the loudest kind of deal, right? Now, we need to think about how do we address this matter, right? So I'm kind of giving a storyline as scenarios, and not in terms of this book or whatever. No, I'm just purely articulating from an experience standpoint. And I've done that many times. When it becomes too disruptive, if it's a person, sometimes I'll just ask them for permission. Can I have a kind of a separate conversation with you, or one-on-one, closed door? Because sometimes there is also a situation where an individual may have a specific agenda. What is that agenda? It's okay to be transparent and be expressive and vocal about that, right? But we need to actually make that front end kind of a move, right? Otherwise, it becomes a bit more complicated. You know why? Because if it is not stopped at the initial point, when it comes to a larger circle of meetings, things actually goes haywire and becomes very difficult from the HR person, stakeholder, to actually make any adjustments, right? If it's a larger group of individuals, then my stance is I just have to be bold enough to actually say either no, right? And there will be a situation they will say, why no, right? You're not being a player. Then it's our duty to build a scenario of example situation. If you terminate someone now due to this reason, you can draw a picture of scenarios and paint a picture to them and say, this could be the end results of multiple things to trigger A, B, C, and D, right? Who is going to face this brunt? So after you've kind of articulated the scenario to the stakeholders, then you start the question again, what would we like to do now, since I've actually said this, right? So you kind of pose, it's a conversation, dialogue that we want to have, but you as an HR practitioner must also know precisely your facts. You must know what business that you are in. We are no longer ER. We have actually moved away from ER for many, many years. We are into the space of business partner role, right? So we have to understand very clearly what business partnering means and how do we actually play our kind of partnership role with stakeholders. So I'm going to pause at this time. Thank you very much. It is. I hope it answers the question, Ken.
Very good, very good. I like the way we spoke about it. It's about stating your state your stand and use moral persuasion to manage. I like the way how Raju coined it to talk about it's okay to be transparent, draw the end picture so that we can show the impact to the organization. Okay, wonderful. I like this. So please bring on more questions to the audience. This is about you. We want to help you to unbox your conflicts that you have about this topic, around this topic. So please bring up or post any comments that you have as well. Yeah. So having talked about this, I want to bring the next question to Mr. Raju. I want to jump to Mr. Raju because this question is kind of similar. From the industrial relation perspective, HR often becomes the mediator between management power and employee fairness, like what we were talking earlier, where we have the pressure and all that. Okay, so what are the most common integrity mistakes HR make during disciplinary investigations?
Right. Okay. Thanks, Ajit. So I think I'll kind of jump into this area, and I can probably even mention. I know earlier on the points I kind of talked about transparency, being bold to say no if you have to. This bit of the question, if you ask me, I think the key thing is we have to actually maintain objectivity, right? It is quite easy to be asked to sway away from this aspect of it, right? We have to be very clear in terms of predetermining, in terms of determining the outcome. We don't want to get into a situation of just because of a certain pressure coming from the management that we would actually end up shortcutting a couple of key elements of the process or the policies or the guidelines, right? And I would sometimes call it, you cannot preform an outcome just as that. We need to kind of maintain the objectivity. We have to ensure we actually have sufficient documentations, right? It's always intrigued me. While we talk about industrial relations, for me, it is a situation where it's a cause and effect, because if something is already triggered, it becomes an after effect, and that's where the IR kind of jumps in to untangle all this. So my position is a situation where we try our best as an HR practitioner to not get into such entanglement, right? That's what I'm saying, right? It is more of how do we actually play our role to ensure we are able to actually safeguard the organization appropriately from the beginning itself, right? So this is where HR need to ensure that we actually stay the course of educating and coaching and guiding managers, right, in the process. And of course, when it comes to the disciplinary investigation, you don't want to jump the gun. Obviously, we need to make sure we stick to compliance, we stick to policy, we stick to the process and guidance. That's the key, right? But it's easy said than done, because there's always a constant pressure from management. Why do we even need this, right? I've had so many managers in the past using the ER umbrella, where they will do all the funny things. They'll come and say, go and see HR, and Raju, this person needs to be fired. And interesting enough, I think they got annoyed with me at some point because they started asking, and I actually say, have a seat. I need some few minutes of your time, right? Do you have documentations to show me certain things? But interesting enough, out of 10 times, easy about 50% or more, they don't have documentation to substantiate. It's for other reasons that may not even stick or be valid, right? Because end of the day, I think the IR folks especially will agree with me. If you can't substantiate with proper documentation, you are on a losing streak, period, right? So I always emphasize the aspect around doing due diligence and appropriate documentations and process compliance. So I'll stop at that. If there's anything else.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Raju. I like the part where he talks about educating, coaching, mentoring, guiding, which must always be there, especially for our line managers, and strict to compliance and also policy and documentation plays a very, very vital role in ensuring that this process is done fairly. Yeah? Okay, I have a comment by Manav. It's a comment, sort of a question, I think, on Datuk's point. One thing that HR can do when faced with pressure from senior management is to do a complete cost slash benefit on the request action, i.e. cost, or in terms of RM, moral or reputation. Okay, very good. So this is like a comment saying that a part of other ways of managing problems, we can quickly do a cost benefit analysis, looking at what is going to be the impact of this decision, and not only dollar and cent, but also on morale and reputation of the organization and the employees. Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Manaf. Okay, I just want to highlight a little bit. When I was growing in my HR career, I had a boss. I used to go to her. I told her, I'm having this problem. My stakeholders are asking me to do something that I can't, because it either violate the company policy or it violates my personal policy. So I can't. So I can't do this. So my boss told me, she was very abrupt. She told me, go and buy this Dale Carnegie book, How to Influence Others. Read the book and you'll be smart. I was like, okay. She just cut short, go and get it. So I did. I read the book. Seriously, it makes some difference. It gives you some other way of influencing. This is just a bit of a slot in between. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. I want to bring this question to Dato' Rahim. We have seen increasing attention on governance, ESG, accountability, and broad oversight in Malaysia. Okay, happening. So, what should HR draw? When should HR draw the line? When leadership behavior technically meets performance expectation, but raises the ethical concerns. Yeah, this is something that I believe many HR practitioners face. Dato', you are Dato' is muted.
HR must anchor on governance and law.
Okay.
There's no choice, right? Governance and law. What do you mean by governance and law? I think in any organization, of course, you have your in-house code of conduct, broad policies, and all these things must be approved by the board, for example. And then you must have a very clear guided integrity policy. I believe that some organization have even formalized integrity committee, which is which chaired by board members and other subject matter expert. The reason being is that I think they look at this issue of integrity as something that is very, very important. If not addressed appropriately, it might has some repercussion to the organization. And then the other thing is, again, as we say in the first question today, we have a lot of guiding principle in the country now, right? The SPRN, the Bursa, the employment laws that are guiding us on this pertinent issue. So when we say that when we should raise concern, I think to me there are few intervention when we observe certain happening in the organization. First, I think when any behavior violates any company rules and regulation, so that's where HR came into the picture. That means we must not compromise such illegal behaviors to the organization. Secondly, I think if there is enough evidence on bullying, harassment, and favoritism or coercion in that perspective, I think HR must come on the picture to address the situation. It at the moment also we are also on ESG, the social part, where we need to focus more on apa itu people matters. What we are saying here is that whatever we do in HR, it has to be very transparent, and also, of course, in most organizations they also have a whistleblowing policy, and then we have to adhere strictly to the whistleblowing policy in that particular organization. I think we in terms of practical action that we have to do in managing this behavior. First, we have to have facts and figures, like as Mr. Raj had mentioned. In any of the complaint, that kind of thing, you must have facts and figures. Well, sometimes we have surat layang, kan? Surat layang or poison letters, that kind of thing. Where do we draw the line? The surat layang can come in different forms. But to me, very simple. If it is just a sweeping statement, surat layang, I will not entertain lah, right? But if in that surat layang, it mentioned the real facts, the real occurrence of that thing, the real figures, I think that also HR need to raise the concern to go and investigate that matter. Okay, and then of course, whenever we are having this kind of issue, sometimes you cannot just hold it at HR level. You have to escalate to your bosses. You must have different channel of investigation. For example, you have your audit committee and so on. And as Raj has said earlier, along the way, we also need to introduce other educational element in terms of coaching, corrective action, and formal investigation. These are some of the issue, I think, when we are having this situation, when leadership behavior technically meets perform, but they are sacrificing on the ethical concern. I think, of late we've been hearing a lot of cases under this context. Yeah, the performance is up there, but along the way, it touch on the ethical concerns of the organization. So this is where HR needs to play their role effectively. Right? Over to you, Jin.
Okay, I like the part where Datuk talks about we need to echo on what the policies are, that helps us to make better decisions, and also talks about being practical and to look at figures and facts before we make a decision. If it's not based on figures, ignore it. Okay, very good. And there are different channels as well, like internal audits and whatever not, other platform. Very good. I think the conversation is picking up. So for the audience, so please post if you have any questions or any please post. We are here. We will try to address as many as possible, as many questions. Now, let me move on to Raju next. This is a little bit about social media. Now, social media has been on the growing trend now. Employees brings their dispute to TikTok, to LinkedIn, to X and whatnot. So how should HR respond when employee grievances move from the normal domain, to which is on the internal process, and move out to the social media? So what do we do? How can we do this?
Okay, thanks, Ajit. If I may actually kind of highlight this aspect of it, yeah. One thing that comes to my mind very clearly is this: we do not want to just unnecessarily jump the gun, right? I'll give an example. We may, the example is assuming you're in the office and you receive a very interesting email, but it kind of looks frustrating, right? I think the reaction is to actually respond ASAP, right? It's an emotion state, right? But I think the key thing is we want to kind of take a step back. This kind of scenarios does happen. May not be so rampant in the past because we have this many new elements introduced in the social media, right? Which is the TikTok and the LinkedIn and etc. Right? But we do not want to overreact emotionally, obviously. But even when we actually kind of think about responding to it, we have to actually have to do that in a very structured manner and be able to verify facts internally. We have to maintain the due process of what we actually do on the documentation part of it, right? As I mentioned earlier, I'm also a firm believer, if things are done appropriately, correctly, and documented proper, that particular event can go anywhere. It does not matter, because as long as we have done the due diligence, we are fine to actually represent and present that in any forum. That's what it is, right? At the same time, it is also very important to ensure the message is very consistent, right? You do not want to mix message by many different individuals to be actually saying it in very different manner and shape. That is actually a problem. So that's why you would know that every organization actually has a very specific dedicated individuals like
Yeah.
PR, public relations. They are actually at the front end of approaching the medias in that sense. Example, right? But who actually feeds those information is the internal aspect. It takes a little bit of structure, time, and process in compliance, right? That's kind of the overarching. Okay. But more interestingly is this: while we are actually kind of trying to address this question on the external aspect of it, for me, more of a critical path is not social media, it's our employees ourselves.
Okay.
Okay. It's an internal aspect that we also need to find ways to balance things appropriately, because HR being on the front end of left, right, center, everywhere, be it management, employee, we become so-called the eyes of many. So we need to actually orchestrate things very appropriately and correctly, right? And I'll stop at that. Thanks.
Okay, very good. I like the part where HR need to play a role, like focused on the employees, make sure what we do, it's done proper because employees are looking and watching. Yeah, fair enough. And for the response part, we need to we do not need to respond immediate. Take your time, slowly calm down, work with various parties, work with internal comms, see what will be the best way of addressing it. Okay, and this definitely is going to happen. Okay, very good. Let's look at our comments. I've got Kang thanking us. Very good. Thank you, Ken. And I've got Manav saying after that pivot to a decision that has integrity, what is the experience of the panel? Okay, so he's well now building on his question earlier, saying that senior management to do a complete cost analysis and then pivot it to integrity. Okay, what is your experience on this? Maybe Raju, you want to address this?
Okay, I like the thanks, Manav. It's interesting. So he's more from the cost benefit. I'm look. The mode of conversation in this forum is you just write something. Obviously, you want to clarify a couple of things as well. But I'm just reading explicitly from what is stated earlier, Manav. Pressure from senior management is to do a complete cost benefit, right? I think if I can clarify, that part of it is actually done, right? And and what are we actually going to actually decide and do. For me, it is this, more importantly, right? What was actually the outcome of the cost and benefit aspect or whatever that has been shared, right? It is something that we want to kind of know very clearly and to be able to determine what do we want to do as the next step, right? It's two separate sets, huh? I can give you an example where an organization is very slanted towards data-driven outcome, right? But even if you think about data-driven outcome, there must always be the balance of the element around the compliance of the value system and the policies and the guidance of an organization. That is the part we bring that to the table, because that is our main key mandate from an HR perspective, right? So the cost benefit is one element while we drive and looking at data, but at the same time, this is where we want to actually kind of be focusing as well. Very vital, very critical, right? Maybe I'm not kind of addressing exactly to that. I'll be more than glad to even catch up even after this forum, and maybe Manav can give me a little bit more insights on what this is as well, right? But that's my perspective on this point, and I'll stop at that unless something is shared.
Yeah, Manav add on to say, correct, Raju. So he concurs what you say, Raju. So no further explanation needed. Thank you, Manav. I like Manav's thought-boggling questions and comments. Okay, let's take Cheng's question. Cheng, she's got a very interesting comment here. I like this very much. Integrity is important. However, from the view of stereotyping of employees, HR always stands with certain interest block. Okay, so how can we ensure such integrity can fully reflected and mitigated stereotype? Dato, you want to take this? You want to try? Or Raju, you have anything to add?
Yeah. Is that okay with you, Dato?
Is that done?
Okay. This is interesting, right? The last thing we want to do is to actually stereotype any individuals, right? This comes across to me like going to the store to buy a cupboard of which size and spec, right? It is not. For me, it is a lot more. Human. It's interesting that we actually have a very unique and a very complex role, right? Human beings are the most complex in the world, not any major systems, right? We know that. But so if we actually put on our HR hat, it is very vital that we do not actually stereotype any. It is more of going out there, being able to clearly understand what is. It's the fact-finding process, is what I'm saying, right? That's why one particular solution does not fit all. It is very different from a technical standpoint. I have this to troubleshoot. You switch on, switch off, press the B button, No, it doesn't. HR does not operate that way. It could be of the same case when someone has got an issue or the integration, integrity part of it or whatever not. But I think diving deeper into the actual scenario is the key thing around this, right? So we have to take the time to actually really, really diligently do due diligence in fact-finding. That's what I can actually offer at this point. And I'll stop at that unless Dato want to just chime in and add anything else. That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much, Raju. I like your comment. Let's move on. Okay, I have a question for Dato. This is about whistleblowing. With whistleblowing cases rising, many HR team worry about risk and organization politics. Okay, how can HR protect whistleblowers while still maintaining organization stability? Okay, this is related to integrity. What could HR do? Okay, by the way, Cheng said
Yeah.
thanks, Raju.
Thank you, Jit, for this wonderful question. Right? Okay, I believe that most organization now would have a certain form of whistleblowing policy, I suppose, right?
Yes, correct.
So you see, in this environment nowadays, to ensure 100% confidentiality on the whistleblowers, something can be quite challenging as well, right? So even they do not know the exact person who do the whistleblowing, but sometimes by basing on what has happened in the past, previous happening, any other staff can just make a conclusion. Oh, this must come from this person, that kind of thing. Either right or true, the one is doesn't matter. So, but it is the duty of HR now to protect the whistleblowers. Okay. All right. In a proof in the policy, I think first thing that we have to be very very clear of our own whistleblowing policy. First, I think it has to be you must get the board approval on the whistleblowing policy. And as I mentioned earlier, I think there must be a multiple reporting channels. For example, the HR audit committee or independent. I know some organization when it comes to whistleblowing, they just go straight to the CEO, right? And then the CEO cascade it down to the people around on the ground. So what the principle is, we should never compromise or take things easy whenever there is a report on whistleblowing. So being in HR, our responsiveness towards this whistleblowing is of a paramount importance. Otherwise, especially when we take too long to do the investigation, sometimes it will not jive well with the environment. I think in whistleblowing policy, I'm sure we have a clause to state that if the issue is not true, I think certain form of action can also be taken against the whistleblowers, right? After when it's not true. So I think that we have to make sure that there must be a fair and independent investigation when there is issue on whistleblowing. Okay, but sometimes when we do the investigation, things will spread out very fast to the organization. So I think it is also quite difficult for us to really protect, maintain the whistleblower issue. Pasal sekarang ni question of private confidential is always been leaked out. So what, to me, some of the strategic role that HR can do, perhaps maybe position whistleblowing as a risk management, not just the kind of rebellion, as a risk management. Second, I think train managers on how to respond professionally to complaints. Sometimes this complaint this complaint will come at the ground floor or at the floor level, right? But so it's up to the head of the department or the supervisor to respond to that kind of complaint. The whistleblower sometimes will erupt whenever there is no action from the people down the line, If they keep on complaining, that kind of thing, there's no action, then only they escalate in the form of whistleblowing to the top management. And also being in HR, we have to act consistently, and we do not take side when it comes to this issue. If there is a real issue, we have to take it as a matter of something that go against the company's rules and regulation. So in all, we have to protect whistleblowers. We should never reveal who are these people, but sometimes along the way, people can always make a guess, and sometimes most of the guess are quite true. That is the person who made the whistleblowing, and that could be retaliation. Because of the could be retaliation, we must also make it very clear in our policy that there must not be any compromise if there is any retaliation from other people towards that whistleblower. Right? Jit, I pause for now.
Agreed. I agree. I like the part, where you say there will be retaliation, and whistleblowers. We need to make sure that that whistleblowers is managed in a very different manners, taking it as a risk management process, and don't take sides. And you're rightfully mentioned, very difficult to protect, especially when it comes to very small department, very small unit. There's only one or two people working there, they're subordinates, and they are the one who may not be happy. So you're right, agreed, very good, I like the feedback. I have a very interesting question from Muhammad Rafizi. Okay, any one of you, Dato or Raju, can take this question. Looking at the integrity in our country, okay, I want to pause here and say that if we look at the integrity index for Malaysia, to be honest, it's nothing to be proud of. Nothing to be proud of. Okay, do you think that there is an issue with the level of integrity, or is it just a perception that brings to a negative vibes throughout the nation nowadays? Very interesting question.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Rafizi. Dr. Rafizi now.
Yeah, Dr.
Okay.
Minta maaf.
This is okay. I think just attempting to look at this question. Whether it is perception or real, I think something that we have to make our own judgment. Because of late, if you all know that at the national level, at the state country level, there are so many issues involving integrity which we do not want to dwell any deeper here. I suppose, Ajit, it can be very sensitive. But I think in even in an organization, despite of all the hoo-ha on this integrity, but I believe it is still happening. It's still happening, maybe not in a bigger, larger scale, but maybe on a smaller scale. Integrity does not come with the size, isn't it? It comes with the act itself. So whether it is big or whether it is small, I think it's happening, right? In fact, I have been receiving a few queries over the last few weeks on some of the issues that was happening in certain organization, and they seek my advice how to handle that kind of situation. So I believe that when that is happening, despite of the hoo-ha outside us, but it is still happening. So I believe that sometimes it can be just perception, but the issue on this level of integrity, I think, is there. But I believe that thing has changed a lot lah. I'm sure people are also quite scared nowadays, because of this hoo-ha in the public eyes. I believe that people are having a second thought on this thing, but it's still there, right? I pause here. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I like the thought. I like the idea. Okay, Raju, anything to add on?
Yeah. It's interesting, Rafizi, or rather Dr. Rafizi. Congratulations. Yes. One word that comes to my mind is this, and I'm not going to actually get into any facts because a very interesting question can be very sensitive as well, right? But for me, with that one word that comes to my mind is transparency, right? So what do I mean by transparency? I think in anything that we do at this point in time, and it's not only a kind of a mindset or a sentiment just in our country, right? It's a global effect. With all these changes happening, a lot of people actually seek for transparency, right? Meaning, let's be very clear in terms of what you want, and it is okay to state the fact as open and clear as possible. It's all in the name of fairness, right? So there's one organization that I worked. Let me just give the IMF, right? I spent a good time at the International Monetary Fund. One of the key things which I actually loved is it's all about being transparent, and that organization is a very, very high level on consensus-based driven organization, meaning every stakeholders, individuals, be it from the high up to the MD to the lowest junior level staff member, will actually be consulted with or to provide input comments, right? And I think that resonates to me when I see this question, because if we are transparent and are kind of as open as what we want to, and be able to share that explicitly, it actually diffuses many situations off the bat, if you ask me, right? Only if there's a situation where one is trying to actually hide or this and that and trying to do a non-compliance, that becomes a problem. That's what it is. So I'll stop at that. Thanks.
I like the thought process of Raju talks about making it transparent. Okay, and very important is always adhere to fairness. Very good. Okay, thank you very much, and a very good question. Thank you to Rafizi, to the other audience. We are now at 4 p.m. We have another 30 minutes to go. So time is running short. So please bring on more questions, bring on more comments. I have another question or a question. I think I see a question mark from Mr. Manaf. Does the panel think that one of the cause of non-integrity is an organization stems from too many fragmented, i.e., too many departments?
Does the panel think that one of their causes?
Yeah,
I
can
can
the having too many departments, can that become or can cause to a situation where there's non-integrity being applied, being there in an organization?
I can take a stab at it if you want, Ajit.
Yes, Raju, please.
Okay. I think what comes to my mind when I see this question is sometimes when organizations actually grow too fast, kind of situation, maybe it's a scenario, or it's a situation where there are too many outfits, or and it's also maybe sometimes you have too many chiefs and chefs and stuff. It'll just spoil the whole meal, right? So
True.
these are all different thoughts, huh? So coming back to this question, I don't know whether to translate this to a non-integrity. Sometimes the divergence of the process, because it's all very siloed. When things are created very siloed, as I mentioned earlier in the previous question, there is a reason why there's a spokesperson in an organization to take it out, to actually have one voice. So if you take this situation in this example, if you actually have many things going on and everybody does their own work, right, that itself is the problem, right? I don't want to actually translate it to a non-integrity aspect of it. Maybe they know it or they don't know it. That's why even we think a lot about, you do not want to have 5 different systems in an organization where you want to actually streamline to one integrated system that actually speaks the language from data or whatever you want, right? So same thing with this. If everything is so fragmented, that alone itself can actually be chaotic, in my view, right? Maybe this is how I'm kind of reading this and I'm just responding to that. But I'll kind of pause, and probably Manav, you can actually kind of just put a note there, yes, no, I'm not sure, kind of a deal. I'll stop at that. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Okay, I want to move on. Next question to Dato' Rahim. This is about HR increasingly expected to advise CEO and boards. How HR plays a role in doing this. Okay, where should HR push? Okay, when should HR push back against senior leadership, and how can HR do it without damaging trust?
Okay, this is a very challenging question. Jit, you give it to me. Okay, you push too hard, you'll be out of job lah kan.
Betul.
Okay, I believe that there are certain principles that HR must uphold. First, whenever there is decision that breach values or code of conduct, I think this is where we need to highlight. Second thing, I think if there is any potential non-compliance with labor laws and or governance standards, for example, the Bursa requirement, the Aspira M requirement, this is we need to highlight. sometimes when we highlight things, sometimes the bosses not. I mean, I'm not saying all. Some bosses will not hear it immediately. They will hear it later when they go back home and think about it again. And then also, ethical risk may trigger investigation by authorities such as SPRM, for example. So if that happens, I think the image of the company will be at stake. And also, if we don't do well, action may cause reputational damage on social media backlash. Okay, all right. To me, there are various principles that we can do in order to push back to some of the views or decision of the senior leaders. One of the ways I believe that for us to overcome this issue without damaging the trust, first, we should focus more on the risk, not on the personality. Right? Let's say this is happen, what will be the outcome? We should not focus on personality. I like Mr. Raju's earlier comment that I think whenever I used to have this kind of practice whenever we need to convince the top leaders on certain thing that if we proceed with that thing, it might come up with the tremendous repercussion. I always bring along a few sample of court cases industry court cases, the kind of thing, court precedent cases, so that they show it to them so that they understand. If we do this could possibly happen as the outcome of this action that taken by the management. So first, you focus on the risk and not on the personality. And then we also have to start educating by framing concerns on governance, ESG as a long-term value. It's not a short-term value. Of course, ESG is not something that is already here for a long time. It's still new in the country. It needs a lot of education process. And then again, when we present our case, we have to use facts and data or precedent cases to convince our bosses. And then we have to maintain confidentiality and professional in this situation. But having said that, I am not saying that's going to be easy, okay? Especially when you are not involved in that decision making. For example, things has been decided at the board level, okay? So the CEO come to you, okay, you have to execute this decision when it's already been decided at the board level. But you know that decision is not in line with what the HR practice is. This is something got stuck in between. So I believe that at the same time, while you are promoting all this intervention by HR, you also need to maintain the trust by your bosses, unless you are saying that, okay lah, never mind lah, bye-bye lah, kan, that's different story lah. But in a real HR professional, I think we have to maintain the trust by the top management. All right? Okay, Jit?
Correct. I agree with that. I like that comment very much. I think what Dato' said was spot on. We need to make sure that if there's any breach of code of conduct, make sure that we follow the governance rule and make sure that we educate. The education process is ongoing. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Raju, I've got one more question for you. Many HR practitioners struggle between empathy and with compliance. Okay, how do we ensure fairness in misconduct cases without appearing either too soft or too strict? And how do we make sure that the integrity part is maintained in this?
Yeah. I think what is very important is we need to make sure that we are very clear and decouple two things. One, empathy would translate to listening. And if I look at in terms of compliance, it actually is kind of equals to a standard, right? It's not an easy task to kind of decouple this so that you kind of keep the emotion aspect of it out as much as possible, right? We need to kind of be very clear about that. You got to separate that from emotion and stick to just evidence-based and investigation, right? Because the last thing you want to do is come across as being too soft, because we are actually on a path of fact-finding, right? We wouldn't actually even determine until we've gone through the course of actions and steps to determine anything. So we want to stick to it very objectively, right? And that needs to be very clearly translated and seen and heard across key stakeholders, right? So that's kind of where you would probably strike that balance of being deemed as being fair, right? It's just like you may have heard someone telling you, you can trust me, right? But I just met you. Trust is actually earned, right? Not just because someone loosely uses the word trust me. I'll get very skeptical about that. So on the same note, if you want to be deemed and seen as being fair, it is a matter of how you emulate and role model that word. And it will be seen. Trust me. Human beings are complex and beautiful in their own ways. They observe plenty, right? So you don't want to come across being too biased into one lopsided situation. It's not, right? And I hope the audience, y'all don't take it like I'm being very philosophical here, whereas we are supposed to be in HR and be very A, B, and C, and the D goes to the E, right? No, sometimes it's not, right? It's a kind of another IQ versus the EQ balancing act that we are trying to demonstrate here, right? So I will stop at that, and maybe Dato can actually kind of chime in if he has additional points. Thanks.
Okay, I like what Raju just mentioned, and the next question that I want to bring up, this is from Cheng. Cheng relates very closely with what we spoke about, empathy and compliance. Okay, with such growth of integrity, can be limited by the company's policy. Okay, question mark. With such growth of integrity can be limited by the company's policy, question mark, as the company policies not updated frequently, okay, not updated frequently, which may create integrity dilemma of HR making decisions and statements. So I think she's asking about with such growth of integrity, can this limit to companies' policies? So companies' policies may be limited because of the growth that's happening in the integrity area. Number one, and then the second one is talking about as the company policies not updated frequently, so which may create integrity dilemma for the HR in making decisions and statements.
I just add a few points, Jit. Okay. I think the first principle you must understand, company policy should not be something that is static. It has to evolve through times. Especially when there are so many changes in the business surrounding us, we have to look at our company policies. Okay, let's look at HR policies per se. It is again not a static document. It is supposed to be a very dynamic document. So whenever there are changes, we must update our policies. Yeah, to a certain extent, we have to balance. We have to balance our role in compromising, or you need to strictly follow the rules and regulations of the company. But under whatever the outcome is, we have to be very sure that whatever you do is basically that you are not violating any rules and regulation. Even if you need to do some exception, what is important, I think that exceptions must not be decided by you if you do not have the power or to decide on the exception. So I'll give you an example. I remember one point of time when I need to send one of my staff to Australia for medical treatment, it costs 200,000. So then, of course, I can't make that decision on my own, right? So if based on the policy alone, the answer is no. But on the other side, being in HR, we must also have that kind of humanizing impact on our people. therefore, in under that circumstances, this is where sometimes you need to escalate the thing to the CEO or even to the board members. So I submit the thing to the board approve, and alhamdulillah, we send the staff to get some treatment in Australia. So that kind of situation, I think we can what they call that, forgo some policy, provided you must get a very clear directive or decision from the management or from the board members, right? Okay.
Okay, very good. I think spot on. Spot on is not so much about the policy; it's more about the people. Very good. Anything to add on, Raju?
Uh, Not really, Ajit. I think Datuk kind of summed it up
Yeah,
well.
sum it up well. Okay, good. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Let's
Yeah.
move on. Our next question. We are now at 4:20, ladies and gentlemen. If you have more questions, please bring it on. If you have any comments, please put it in the comment section. We welcome comments. We welcome questions as well. So next question to Datuk Rahim. Okay, what separates HR department that genuinely upholds integrity from those that simply enforces policies?
Okay,
Probably
thank you, Jit, for this
to the
question.
previous question as well. You know, it's
Okay, thank you for this question, Jit. All right. Two issues. One is you genuinely uphold integrity, and against those who just enforce policies. Two paradox. I
yeah,
think when we talk about integrity, those who are okay, people sometimes have different views on certain things, even in HR itself. We have probably okay under this context. Let's take this as two sides of the HR people, HR leaders. One is who are integrity driven. Second is who are policy enforcing HR leaders. Okay, what are some of the example? If it is integrity driven, see itself as a custodian of culture and values, and also anchors decision on ethics, fairness, and long-term sustainability, and willing to challenge leadership when necessary. That is integrity driven HR. But those policy enforcing HR driven is basically focused solely on compliance and procedure. If it is not complying, then it's a no-no. Second, operates reactively rather than proactively, and avoids difficult conversation to maintain a comfort. Okay, when it comes to decision making approach, I think those who are holding to integrity HR considers both what and how performance is achieved when it comes to decision making approach, and then applies policies consistently. However, for those who are policy HR driven, they apply HR mechanically, rely strictly on written clauses, and may overlook an ethical behavior if technically compliant. So this is sometimes that we cannot compromise. So how do we handle these two paradox? I believe that we got to balance between these two. Like as I said earlier in my earlier conversation, a certain thing, if it is not within the policy, but if you have to do it, you have to do it, and you need to do it. I think
correct.
you have to get the authorities to sanction whatever you are doing, because you don't get sanctioned, then you'll be in trouble, right? So in this context, the HR role has to be looking at both perspectives. While you are maintaining the HR policy and HR compliance, but at the same time, there are moments, there are situations whereby you need to just go beyond policies and procedures. But of course, when you go beyond policies and procedures, that must also be guided by certain principle, and you must get the necessary approval before you execute that particular thing, which is not so in line with your policies. As I said again earlier, that policies are not something that is stagnant, not static. It always evolves around time. And also when it comes to policies, we need to look at how do the business environment, the surrounding, the kind of thing, we need to change policies according to the needs of the organization and the people around us. So therefore, we cannot have that kind of silo mentality, but we must balance between the two, the following the HR policies per se, and also at the same time, there are times where we need to little bit compromise on the integrity in order to fulfill something that is after being sanctioned by the authorities. No? Okay, bye.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that summed it up very well. Okay, very good. Okay, we are reaching the hour soon. We are about to come to our closure. Now, let me just ask randomly, Mr. Raju, what would be your final say about this topic? What would be something that you want the audience to remember?
Thanks, Ajit. Good. I would, one thing that I would say, obviously, this topic is very relevant, and I'm glad that we kind of picked this topic. I hope we actually have good level of audience have joined in, right? We can obviously have follow-up specific more conversation on narrow topics as well. Yeah, but it is a very integral set of questions where we actually had an opportunity to talk a lot more. Integrity is a key, right? And we will actually be coming across this scenario all the time. We just need to find ways to embrace and be prepared to address such matters, right? Um, and I probably will leave it at that, but I do thank you, and I hope that fellow HR colleagues who are on the call, benefited from some key points that we've kind of shared, but feel free to reach out as well specifically.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any way, if in the event the audience want to reach out to you, Raju, is there any social media that you're active on?
I'm on LinkedIn. It's exactly to what I actually have stated as my name, Salva Raju Pillai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Dato, any final words? Dato, any final words?
Okay, thank you, Ajit, again. I think, as Mr. Raju has said, this is a very interesting topic, which we cannot just ignore question of integrity nowadays. But just some thoughts lah on some of the young HR leaders in moving forward again. How do we handle the situation? First, I think being HR young leaders, you have that moral courage lah to do things. That means you must be willing to speak up respectfully to the senior leadership. Of course, integrity and consistency must not compromise. And then we must look at also in terms of the future requirement of our talent. I think that the skills have been changing a lot nowadays. Many new things coming into the picture, right? And also we have to also ensure that whenever we do things, there must be some sound judgment, and sometimes you have that professional independence, for example, when someone asks you certain advice, you should be able to give that advisory rule. The other situation, you must be constructive assertiveness, you must be assertive in situation. And again, you talk about confidentiality and discretion. That is one of the HR most important thing. And of course, you must have that resilience and emotional stability. You wrap up in all these things, I think you should be able to become a good HR practitioners in the future.
That's a lot, Dato. That's a lot.
Especially when we are talking about integrity. Integrity ini to me is like something that can I something in bahasa Melayu, Jit?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Integrity ni is something like seekor semut hitam di atas batu yang hitam di malam yang kelam. That is integrity is all about. Seekor semut hitam di atas batu yang hitam di malam yang kelam. Right? Tak nampak, but it is there. That is what I'm trying to summarize our talk today. Thank you very much to Mr. Jit and to Raju and also to all the audiences for being patiently waiting for this afternoon. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Dato' Rahim. Thank you, Raju. Today's discussions remind us of integrity is easy when considered when considerations are comfortable. Integrity becomes leadership when pressure exists. So when there's pressure, then we fumble, we struggle. HR professional today must move beyond policy administrators and become trusted genuines of fairness, governance, and also conciseness in that organization. So with that, thank you very much, Dato. And my closing remark again before we close, I'd like to remind everyone, MIHRM, we are a professional body. We talk about ethics, we talk about industrial harmony, we develop capability development of Malaysia workforce. Okay, we invite everybody to stay connected with MIHRM through our certification program, through our leadership forums, through our IR and employee law updates, talent and leadership development initiatives. Okay, finally, to the audience, thank you today for joining us in MIHRM Insights. Have a wonderful afternoon ahead. MIHRM Insights signing off. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sajid.
Bye bye.